Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this topic, how to deal with depression using Enrich Method. My name is Darya Haitoglou. I'm a psychologist and the director of Virginia Satir Institute in the UK, London. And today we're going to be talking about this pressing issue. If you Google depression, it comes up more than 5 billion mentions of depression on the Google search only. So it's quite an impressive number. I don't think many words would bring so many impressions, but let's look into why it is so popular as the condition, as the name, as the concept, and what to do with depression. So I would like to share a few slides on the background, what's happening with depression around the world, and also present to you the method that I created called Enrich Method, based on the work that I've been doing across psychology, running retreats, workshops, and working with people who suffer from depression. Now, I'd like to start by sharing with you this little animation cartoon. As a person sitting in kind of a hole in the ground. If you cannot see the slides, hopefully you can see the slides because they're very visual. And for those of you who are visual people, this would be a very good benefit of not just listening to my voice, but actually seeing the slides. And if you're one of the kinesthetic, tactile people like me, I always have some form of little things with me that I touch and fidget with. Hopefully they're not phones or interactive gadgets because they're great distractions. So I always put them screen down so they do not disturb me, and put a silent, or better to be on the airplane mode for the duration of this presentation. And I'll tell you why, because these companies that produce gadgets, they're very, very good at grabbing that attention, that the focus of your brain information sort of gate, that you can perceive whatever information that you are reading, viewing, responding. And if we're not careful, we get so bombarded with demands, messages, and all this information that it might be a cause of that big D word that we're talking about today. So let's put the gadgets out. So let's focus hopefully on your laptop as you grab a cup of coffee, maybe a cup of tea, invigorating, stimulating, and get that energy up for us to learn how to deal with depression. So the cartoon says, hello, I fell in that hole last year. Need a hand? No one has ever felt this awful. And that's a depiction of how many times people feel, even if there is help out there, even if we know what we should be doing, if we know there are other people who suffered from depression, and probably if you just ask yourself, if it's not you, somebody who has suffered depression or is suffering from depression currently. And that's a big problem for our society. So if we look at the statistics, let's see, here we go. So the statistics that everyone should know, according to Very Well website, more than 300 million people worldwide experience or suffer, I would say, depression, according to the World Health Organization. 3.1 million people between ages 12 and 17 only in the US have experienced at least one major depressive episode in the past year. Median age of onset is around 32 and a half years old. So it's quite an interesting disease that starts generally around or after a person becomes 32 on average. But of course, it can happen anytime. 8.7% of women have depression versus 5.3% of men. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people ages 10 and 34. Nearly 50% of those diagnosed with depression also have an anxiety disorder. And depression is very treatable, but only 35% of adults receive none. But 35% of adults receive no treatment of depression. So this is what we're talking about. And the next slide is also quite depicting, because here we talk about teenagers who experience depression. For me, this says it all. So if you see this graph, and the deep red, dark red is the people experience, or teenagers experienced major depressive episodes. So for example, in 2006, it was less than 8%. And 2018, just 12 years later, it's 14.4%. So steady, unfortunate growth. Now, out of this growth, the light red is the received treatment. And you can see it's much, much less than the actual cases of the teenagers experiencing depression. Now, of course, when we take into account the latest COVID-19 consequences, our mental health has suffered greatly because of that. Anxiety and depression increased 25% during the first year of the pandemic only. 41% of all American adults reported having symptoms of anxiety and or depression during this time. 23% of people aged 18 to 25 said that the pandemic had a significant negative impact on their mental well-being. 35% of people who make $40,000 or less reported a significant negative impact on their mental health. And during the pandemic, there was a 13% increase in substance abuse problems. So this becomes a real problem that we need to tackle. Everybody in mental health currently, helping professions, experience this influx of people with COVID-related depression, mental health conditions. So we are in great need of tools that work to help us all fight depression. Now, what are the signs and what are the symptoms of this disease? The first one is a very common one. It's a persistent feeling of sadness, loss of interest in activities, trouble sleeping or oversleeping, too much sleeping, appetite or weight change, fatigue or decreased energy, difficulty thinking clearly or quickly, irritability, frustration or pessimism, physical aches and pains, and recurrent thoughts of death or suicide. That's a very important symptom when we talk about depression from a clinical perspective. Now, of course, there's a whole range of different symptoms when we talk about the body symptoms, from poor concentration, loss of joy or pleasure, fatigue, withdrawal from friends and family, irritability, difficult sleeping, weight gain or weight loss, headaches, muscle aches, upset stomach, lack of motivation, suicidal thoughts. Now, if we look at the body organs, because we are all connected, everything inside of us is connected. So there is this, brain, of course, inside our head that is connected to all our organs through blood, but also neural connections and networks. There are muscles, there are different tissues, and the symptoms range significantly. So if people experience, for example, and notice muscle aches or other pains, they may not even relate to the depression or anxiety that come hand in hand often, or extreme fatigue and tiredness, or increased blood pressure, or upset stomach. In many children, it's just a breathing problem that bothers a person, or headache, or consistent panic attack, or pounding heart, irritability. Now, when we look at the theory behind the depression. There's a Dr. Stephen Porges who has created a theory called Polyvagal theory that talks about three different states that our nervous system goes through. And when we talk about depression, there's a particular state of the nervous system that gets activated. And once we recognize it, it's a really big plus, because once we know what the problem is, we can treat it, we can face and change it, we can shift our depressive state. Most of the depressions stay recognized, there's no diagnosis, there's no treatment, of course, and people just bury this stigma under the carpet, and they don't want to talk about it, because in most cultures and most societies, it is a taboo topic. Feeling depression or being depressed is considered bad, and it shouldn't be. Actually, depression is part of our life. Most people go through this state, and the most important thing is not to get stuck into it, in it. That's what is debilitating. If we can go through depression and we can come out stronger, actually it builds our resilience, it builds our strengths, and it builds our resource toolkit. So let's just look a little bit into this polyvagal theory before we turn it into solutions. So we all know that under stress, we go into fight or flight. That is generally a sympathetic nervous system. And it is when we face a threat, we mobilize our defense mechanisms inside our body through the neural connections along the spinal cord, and the heart gets increased, and we should breathe shallowly, and we have muscle tension. Now, that generally animals experience and people experience. And animals, what they do, they shake it off. They have tremor after they get the shock of being, chased by an animal, or having that sudden surprise, when they need to mobilize themselves or fight or flee. Now, when people get stuck in that sympathetic nervous system response to stress, and they don't get a solution from fighting or fleeing, a lot of the time they go into the further stage of the dorsal vagus of the shutdown, collapse, or freeze. That is immobilization. It's a second line of defense where the diaphragm, the gut, it literally gets kind of a shut down by the vagus nerve, and the feeling is sort of trappedness, or there's a feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, and there's a desire of bypassing, sort of disappearing, freezing, fainting. A lot of people use addiction as a sort of bypass or spiritual bypassing. And of course, what we all want is the opposite. We want to be in a social engagement system. It's called ventral vagus state, when we are in green zone. The communication connection is free. We feel confident. Our esteem is high. Our face and throat and chest are relaxed. All internal organs work perfectly. We're in rest and digest situation where we can engage with ourselves and others without big problems. So this is what's called polyvagal theory. Polyvagal, vagus is the nerve that goes through our body from the top until the bottom. And literally, if you think of it as the traffic light system, here you see it starts with neuroception of safety, meaning that that green zone where we feel very good when we have our ventral vagus activated and we feel relaxed. Go into this yellow zone of a fight or flight, danger zone, and then if we're not careful, we get into this overwhelm, the shutdown, where neuroception of a life threat is activated. It's also parasympathetic nervous system. So that's a very tricky state, because in many cases, we will discuss this, it actually doesn't show to others that we are in that separation, sort of depression stage, because we can put a smile on our face. We could put a mask on our face, and many family members do that, and we don't recognize that they are depressed on the inside. And in order for them to go into the green zone, they will have to go through the yellow zone. So many times when people go through therapy, from the disconnection, we see them being angry or irritative, or they become sort of a different kind of person. And in many cases, this is the journey for a person who was disconnected, who had a depression, and then they go through the change process. In order to get to the green zone, they go through the yellow. Okay, so don't be surprised if that's you going through this change process, or somebody from your family going through that. So that's part of the journey. Now, there are different types of depressive disorders. Here, just a few. The major depressive disorder, what we know as a clinical depression, persistent depressive disorder, bipolar depression, postpartum depression, menstrual or premenstrual dysphoric disorder, seasonal affective disorder, and atypical depression. So all these are variations of different clinical conditions that people might have, and in most cases they are undiagnosed. But it's important to become aware, because there are so many wonderful tools once we become conscious, careful, and willing to receive help. Now, of course, there are slightly different symptoms that need to be present in order for that depression to be diagnosed. For example, for major depressive disorder, at least 5 symptoms listed in the diagnostic manual that we use in the psychological field. For perinatal depression, which occurs before actually or after childbirth, a lot of people think of that kind of depression only after given birth, but there are cases, and many cases, when that depression happens even before childbirth, and a lot of the time it's not diagnosed properly. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder has symptoms of severe depression, anxiety, and irritability before menstruation. Most women experience that PMS syndrome, and many men don't understand why suddenly from a fully they call it normal and regulated emotionally woman, here comes a woman that is irritative or anxious, and she might cry, she might burst into anger or sadness, and it's very difficult to understand, especially for men who never experienced menstrual syndrome. So this kind of interesting biological hormonal changes are worth explaining to young men, and especially if you have a partner and you know that you're going through PMS, and this is something that you can share. Look, it's not your fault, it's not my fault, I'm just going through this phase, it's going to be over in a few days. Persistent depressive disorder that occurs for most of the day during the bout, let's say, of depression, and it doesn't go away. It's like a chronic state of, it could be a mild depression, it could be severe depression, but there are different symptoms that can be recognized. Some we say, oh, this person is so negative, they're constantly negative. They may be suffering from this kind of depression type. Seasonal affective disorder occurs seasonally, obviously, and in many cases during winter months. There are some cultures and countries which are more prone to this kind of seasonal influence because of the lack of sunshine. And treating that in in a very effective way could prevent many family members from experiencing this kind of syndrome, and it's very preventative. So how do we deal with that? Atypical, diagnosed with and includes mood reactivity, MDD, and includes mood reactivity. Again, there are so many different variations. So if you notice there's something going on for you, I encourage you to talk to your mental health provider, your doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, even your therapist if you have one. Now, of course, there are many factors that influence why some suffer from depression and some don't. Genetics plays a big role. Brain chemistry imbalance plays even larger role. And we'll talk a lot about brain chemistry and the hormones in the Enrich method that I created. Poor nutrition, and we will talk a lot about nutrition and what foods are good for which kind of hormones and how to balance it. Physical health issues are another big factor that influences whether people get depressed or not. Drugs taken or not, and of course, stress. Stress is the major factor and trigger for depression, and we cannot eliminate stress from our life. It's gonna just, as we age, it's gonna get more, so we'd better know and find tools that work. And as I mentioned, there are signs of smiling depression, and you can notice if there is change in eating habit, if there's weight loss or gain, if there is a presence of insomnia, difficulty falling asleep or waking up consistently throughout the night, can't get out of bed, the opposite, so feeling so sleepy, so tired, signals of hopelessness, a lack of interest in activities, and most important difference, let's say, in this smiling depression, it's appearing cheerful. And this is also something that we need to be careful. It's not, when a person appears happy, they don't experience depression. Most people hide the feeling of depression. Now, what can we do to help ourselves? Let's just get a little centering exercise. Let's just close our eyes if you feel comfortable. Hopefully you're not driving. Sit in your chair. As you listen to my voice, I invite you to stretch your spine, put your hands up, palms up, make half smile, close your eyes, put your feet on the ground or on the floor, and take a few deep breaths through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. A few more deep breaths, and imagine with each breath you feel your body through your feet with golden light energy that comes from the center of the earth. And as it travels through your soles of your feet, it goes through your ankles, through your knees, through your thighs, through your hip bones, to your belly, to your internal organs, to your chest area, to your shoulders, arms, hands, fingers, through your neck, to your head. And as you relax your muscles, even of your face, of your eyelids, you feel how it feels to be connected and grounded to the center of the earth. And at the same time, feel like on the top of your head, there is an invisible thread that connects you to the star that has the best version of you. There is a higher version of you, and you sit in the middle between the center of the earth and the star that has your name. And notice how it feels to feel your body with that golden light, a light that invigorates, that warms you up, that gives you energy, that cleanses and clears all the blockages, all the toxins that flushing through and eliminating with each breath you take. And feel how it feels to put a little smile on your lips, and feel how it feels to put a little smile in your heart. Imagine if your heart could smile, if your lungs could smile, if your liver could smile, if your kidneys could smile, if your reproductive organs could smile, if every cell in your body could have a little smile, and notice how it feels to get that boost of positive energy into your body. Feel how it feels to breathe in, notice your thoughts, and when you're ready, I would like you to open your eyes and notice how you feel in your body and what difference this little exercise makes in the way how you breathe, in the way how you are, in the way how you perceive yourself. Isn't that wonderful? If you could just let me know, I would have heard some nice, positive little things. So you can write it down. Journaling your positive thoughts is a wonderful way to make a little step towards what we call happiness. And here's a little cartoon for you. Where did you find that? I've been searching for it everywhere. I created it myself, saying somebody holding a jar of happiness. So talking about now the Enrich method that I created based on three big fields of knowledge. One is called neuroscience. It's what we know from the research of the neurology and physiology of neurons in our body. Communication is how we use our language to influence our thoughts, our feelings, and the way how we behave. And body work, how we move, how we position our body, whether we make our body feel good or not. You know, if you make a little exercise here and you just look up into the sky, open your arms wide and palms up. And if you smile, just looking up, it's impossible to feel sad or depressed because our biology and physiology of our body knows unconsciously that this posture, this position is about looking up and seeing the sky. And when we smile, we send a signal to our brain that it's a green zone, it's social engagement, and it's impossible to feel sad or depressed. So ask yourself, how much time do you spend in this kind of position during the day? I bet not a lot. Most people sit in front of their computer or slouch, and when they feel depressed, what they do? They collapse, they close their body, they make themselves small, they crawl in their bed, hugging a pillow, cry in the dark when the melatonin is produced, and they feel sad. And it's a natural response to the body who suffer from trauma, for example. But at some point, when there's light, we open the curtain. When there's sunshine, we open up. And that's what makes the shift towards better. That's kind of how body works. So in the middle between neuroscience, communication, and body work lies the Enrich method. I'm going to share a little snippet of it with you today. And there's a lot more that we will explore in different parts of presentation. So the Enrich method stands for explore versus routine, nourish versus deplete, respond versus react, imagine versus willpower, communicate versus assume, and hugs versus withdraw. So the beginning of this letter of these words is abbreviation for the word enrich. And every concept, every word of this method represents a different hormone that we would like to balance in our body. And having that cocktail of the emotions and hormones balanced will prevent and heal and cure those mood swings or those low moods of depression. And we will explore a little bit how that works. So explore is connected to dopamine, nourish serotonin, respond with cortisol, imagine with endorphins, communicate with estrogen, and hugs with oxytocin. So let's dive a little bit into each of them. My favorite one, explore. I put here the picture of a Greek island called Santorini. I love exploration of Greek islands. I'm currently in Greece. And guess what? When we travel, when we explore, when we do something new, when we experiment, when we take risk, when we do something different now during our day, a hormone called dopamine is produced. And dopamine plays a role in motivation and reward-driven behaviors. Although dopamine alone may not directly cause depression, having low levels of dopamine may cause specific symptoms associated with depression. So it is important that we boost this hormone called dopamine. So how do we do that if we cannot travel? Follow your joy, I call it. That's a wonderful method of following whatever makes you feel a little bit excited. It's not, we're looking for not like euphoria or like massive bouts of excitement, but little moments of joy. And there's joy in everything, even if some people say, oh, we spend so much time now at home, my kitchen is a mess, I get depressed every time I see it, and I cannot deal with it. How can I make it joyful? How can I start cleaning it? And I say, well, if you start with a little piece in your kitchen, let's choose sink. And if you clean your sink and make that little clean spot, that brings you joy. Now, that little moment, that little space can actually trickle down and influence you to clean a little bit more next to it, a little bit more. And with time, as if you follow your joy, you will bring more to your life that actually cures, prevents, and heals depression, because joy helps us produce dopamine. Of course, there are different ways to do that. And we can also increase dopamine by taking certain food. And if we increase intake of probiotics, for example, Greeks who are very famous for living longer and happier, Greece has one of the blue zones. The blue zones are the 5 blue zones in the world where people live the longest. And Ikaria, the island of Ikaria in Greece, is one of those. Other places of the world, blue zones are Loma Linda in California, for example, and Nagoya in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, and Nicoya in Costa Rica. So we have different parts, but most of them have very interesting lifestyle choices. And of course, Greeks are very famous for yogurt. Greek yogurt includes probiotic, and that is a staple food for Greeks. Fish oil. Most of these cultures who live long and happy and they don't have depression as a national characteristic, they have fewer depressed people and they live happier longer. They have fish in their diet. So fish oil, omega-3s, bring it on. Curcumin, for example, curcuma, it's called how do you call this? In different cultures, it's a different kind of, let me see how you call it in your part of the world. I guess, let me see if I can go to this link so I can find. Okay, turmeric, here we go. So turmeric has a very interesting antidepressant effect. As per the studies suggest, it increases the release of dopamine. So it's interesting that in some studies, 1 gram of that turmeric in curcumin had similar effects as that of Prozac on improving mood in people with major depressive disorder, MDD. There's evidence that turmeric increases dopamine levels in mice. And okay, we need more research to actually do that on humans, but there is some indication that turmeric latte, for example, is a really good thing. Oregano oil, again, oregano is one of the staple foods in Greece. We use that every day, and it has both antibacterial and antioxidant properties, as well as carvacrol. And carvacrol promotes dopamine production and provided antidepressant effect. So oregano oil, or just oregano, just add to your food, your salads. Very easy, right? Magnesium. Magnesium is a wonderful effect, and it increases dopamine, but also has antidepressant qualities. And there are very easy supplements. I take magnesium sometimes. All of this is psychoeducational. So if you consider changing your diet, taking any supplements, please consult with your healthcare providers. This is just for your education only. Green tea, caffeine, ginseng, all these theine or caffeine substances, they have amino acid L-theanine that directly affects the brain. So L-theanine can increase certain neurotransmitters, including dopamine. In multiple studies, they have shown that the antidepressant effect that also enhances the cognitive function, especially the green tea extract, and is something that easy to schedule in a day, just to be mindful. And we have the whole presentation on dopamine coming, so stay tuned. Vitamin D, another one. Anyway, let's move on, and let's look at the second very important part of the Enrich method, how to balance the hormone called serotonin, again, through nourishing our body, our mind, our spirit, our senses. There are multiple ways to raise your serotonin naturally. Number one is exercise. Regular exercise can have mood boosting effects, and it is a must for those who don't do any activities physically. Let me show you one video, hopefully it will play, that changed the way how I relate to exercise. It made me actually exercise more. So let's see if you can hear this. Okay, hopefully you followed this. I find it very exciting, inspiring, and also informative. Now you've got the scientist, the leading scientist on exercise, neuroscience, connecting it. There's also a link to some background, but I think this video just shares it all, and hopefully it will motivate you to try. Now, of course, there are other things that raise your serotonin naturally. A healthy diet, foods that can increase serotonin levels include eggs, cheese, turkey, nuts, salmon, tofu, pineapple, and meditation. Meditating can help relieve stress and promote a positive outlook on life, which can greatly boost serotonin levels. Now, if we go a little bit into more into the serotonin diet, here's a link for healthline foods that can actually boost your serotonin. For example, I didn't know why eggs, but yolks, for example, are extremely rich in tryptophan, along with tyrosine, choline, biotin, omega-3 fatty acids, and other nutrients that are major contributors to the health benefits and antioxidant properties of eggs, right? The cheese is another great source of tryptophan, a yummy favorite you could make. Okay, fine. Pineapples, right? Oh, it's great. Tofu, soy products, salmon, nuts, and seeds, turkey, serotonin. Anyway, so there are many, many ways you can help yourself. So exercise, sunshine, Light therapy is a common remedy for seasonal depression. Research shows a clear relationship between being exposed to bright light and serotonin levels. To get better sleep or to boost your mood, try to work in a daily lunchtime um, and walk outside. Gut bacteria, eat a high fiber diet to fuel healthy gut bacteria and have that gut brain probiotic as part of your routine. Okay, next one, respond. Okay, people with depression tend to have reduced amounts of serotonin in their brain and elevated levels of cortisol in their bloodstream. Because cortisol is related to stress, implementing a stress management lifestyle may be an important aspect of coping with your depression. So here I put some of the ways to reduce the level of cortisol. The goal is to eat foods that reduce inflammation. And inflammation, if you reduce inflammation, you reduce cortisol level. So here are some foods that help combat stress by lowering your cortisol. Magnesium-rich foods, for example, avocados, bananas, broccoli, dark chocolate, pumpkin seeds, spinach. Okay, of course, there are many, many other ways to reduce stress. You know, how do you learn how to respond rather than react? There's a whole art of for that letter that I'm going to share in another presentation, how we can use our body, work in triads and work with the response stances, communication stances. But for now, just changing your little, food, adding pumpkin seeds in your granola, whatever, yogurt with probiotic, right? Little simple changes. Next one, imagine happy family. Imagine having a great way to celebrate every day that you're alive. Also, there are foods that increase endorphins. Endorphins, of course, they're boosted by exercise, but cacao stimulates the release of endorphins as well as happy chemical serotonin, the bliss chemical phenylthylamine, and anandamide for a naturally positive outlook. Spicy foods, radiola, ginseng, vanilla bean, vanilla coffee. I love vanilla soy latte with a bit of turmeric. That's my favorite choice of the morning. Again, some of the things to start a conversation with your health provider and doctor, and maybe you find the way to help yourself. Now, communication is a very important part of the balance in that hormonal cocktail, because we talk about estrogens. When we communicate and we create that sort of harmony state of communication, there are also, interestingly, phytoestrogens that can help us boost that estrogens. For example, soybeans or flax seeds, sesame seeds, natural ways to help ourselves rebalance and prevent from depression. Hugs, using hugs is so important. Now here I would like to share with you how it works. What is the magic of hug to produce oxytocin? But also there is a power of touch. So if you hold hands, there is a whole study done on haptics, or the art of touch, right? And the tactile receptors in our skin. There are 4 different types of receptors. We have the surface receptors. We have Meissner's corpuscles. We have also Merkel cell tactile disc, and we have the deeper layer, 2 types of cells, Pacinian corpuscle and also Ruffini corpuscle. So all these 4 types, what they do, they send signals to our brain about the touch that we receive based on the strength, on the vibration, on the material, on the texture, okay? And when we hug, when we touch, when we hold hands, when we cuddle, when we make love, when we even hug ourselves, when we pet our pet, when we stroke up our pet, we send signals of green zone, that social engagement, rest and digest, stay to our vagus nerve so we can activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Very, very important part of this balancing act for the Enrich method to work. And again, foods to increase oxytocin, there are some little helpers: figs, avocados, watermelon is one of the big ones, spinach, orange juice, broccoli, chia seeds, chamomile tea, and extra virgin olive oil. Anyway, so I wanted to give you some simple, very effective, very natural tools that you can use in conjunction with other tools. But these are something to remind ourselves that nature has created it all. Being in nature, doing gardening, going for a walk, doing exercise, physical exercise, and having all these little reminders for the hormones to rebalance will create the enriched state, energy rich, love rich, and hopefully you will feel better after doing and implementing at least one change that you've learned from this presentation. I thank you very much for being here. Here are the ways to connect with me. Here is my website and the Instagram, the.family.psychologist. You can find me on Instagram, connect with me on the website, or Facebook, or any other social media. Anyway, thank you for your attention, and I look forward to hearing from you.